It looked more like a lake.
And some of the cruise ships even have reversed where the bow is
Thank you.
retreating down at the water line and set back up above. Yeah, really different looking.
What's the idea behind
We engineered,
it?
figured out something better, but.
Engineers trying to make a lake.
Mhm.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah, pleasure craft as well. The hulls.
Little plastic. Typical, but with the protruding and no one. I was invited to go over the whole magic with the that's the whether we were living in early December. But I followed it over actually, and I watched the unload we were doing with it. So I watched the unload in silver. And the captain says it's a good job you didn't come because it was in the roughest. Well, the magic wasn't bad going into the channel was really rough. He says the boat was going bang, bang, bang. And he says we're doing about 33 degrees. He said, 45 degrees, we just keep on going. What was we doing?
Now we'll look at that sweater, the product line is good, it's fleece. It doesn't look cheap.
Yeah, we actually ordered some PVC stuff from Custom. It's almost pretty well. Let's keep that here.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, do we have everybody running?
The only person missing is Dan, and he did not reply.
Okay.
So we're
So we'll call the meeting to order. Does anybody have a pecuniary interest that they need to prepare?
I do, yeah.
Which item?
She has a question.
6 months.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the downtown loan project. Okay, so we'll get you to step out for 6.5 when we tackle that.
Sure.
Okay, yes, that's great. Okay, so the agenda is before you for your package. Is there any concerns, any edits, any updates or additions that you would like to make to the agenda? Hearing none, can I get a mover? Dan and Gerald? Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda? Zero, everybody? Okay, so the minutes from our last meeting are in your package. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to go through them. Any errors, omissions in the minutes from the last meeting? Seeing anybody? Can we get a mover in a second? Into Bill and Joe? All in favor of approving the agenda or approving the minutes, rather? Okay, thank you. Okay, so CDF requests. So the context of this, I know we've got a few sort of newer board members, and even when I went through this initially on agenda review, I thought the money was coming from us. It's not. It's actually us suggesting to the city that the city should. So when we see the CDF requests, which are in section 5 here, the money coming from Algoma University or towards Algoma University in terms of this request is for us to recommend to the city that they use CDF funds in order to fund. It's not coming from the EDC, the EDC bank. Okay, so there's a fairly extensive briefing note in the package. And did somebody from the city, Tom, did you want to kind of give the quick on this? I know you were a last minute substitute, so we'll give you a lot of leeway.
much appreciated, thank you. Yeah, so just to summarize to the board, this is a new building, Muckrow Heigen project from Algoma University. It's a significant new build for the university, and it really kind of takes advantage of their special charter as a university in terms of being a former residential school and building out a new facility that would enable further research, archives, and collaboration space and classroom space on the campus of Algoma University. The building will also house a collaboration with Northern Ontario School of Medicine. And will be an area that I know Algoma University is hoping that will attract further researchers from around the world to come to Algoma University to conduct research as it relates to the impact of residential schools and also in kind of the way forward here in Canada as we look at the impact of residential schools and moving forward. So the building has, as I mentioned, archival and research space for local Indigenous history. It'll have ceremonial space for the university on campus, integrate Indigenous culture into student life, create a unique space at the university that honors the Indigenous-led teachings and gatherings to showcase Indigenous art. And as I mentioned, house the Northern Ontario School of Medicine locally and focus on mental health and addictions training for future physicians in Northern Ontario. The project is estimated to be a $43 million construction project. It will provide a much needed educational facility space for the university as they grow. And it's a priority project for the university in terms of their campus development. For the physical footprint here in Sault Ste.
John, I think one of the things we discussed at the exam a week ago on this project was just the history of donations with respect to the university college, how this is not out of the pattern sort of thing. Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, the city has supported both the university and Sault College with new buildings and development projects. And typically it's followed a format of equal support for the two institutions. So we've done when the Sault College did the IE3 building, their new building, the city used the CDF to support the growth of that facility. City supported the growth in Algoma University's business department previously. Now that project didn't actually finalize because it was just before COVID. And part of this is taking funds previously approved to put in towards this project, the Muckle project.
Okay. And then with respect to what's in the CDF account at present, can you elaborate a little bit on that so that we know there's enough funds for what we're recommending?
Yes, we just approved $160,000 for the CDF Monday night for the Harvest Algoma project. Or sorry, $180,000 for Harvest Algoma. We had $1.1 million in the CDF just before that, so we're just shy of $1 million in the CDF at this point in time. This ask will be spread over 3 years, and each year the budget allocation is $500,000 towards the community fund.
Okay, so there's sufficient funds.
Correct.
Any questions for Tom or Russ?
What would be the completion date of the facility? Yeah, it's a good question. They're hoping to go out to tender, as I understand it, in the very near future on the project. And when we originally talked with them, it was looking at, I'm trying to see if it's in here, but I believe, as I recall, it's a 2-year construction project. So sometime within the next 3 to 4 years. If we can.
Okay. And you know where on the site it'll be? Just going to be behind that.
And it'll be actually right in the front as you look at the university on the right hand side where the Doc Brown Lounge was or is now. That would be replaced with this new. It's quite an impressive design, and it's actually won an award already. The design for this new building, so it will definitely be a showcase and a centerpiece for Algoma University campus moving forward.
Any other questions for Tom? Hearing none, so the motion before us is that it resolved that the EDC endorses the request from the university in the amount of $600,000 from the CDF for the construction of a cultural center and recommends that City Council approve this request. We have no further questions. Can we move on? Go. All in favor? Okay, the second request from the CDF is for, this is item 5.2. It's the Tales from the Void Season 1. And in this case, it's a movie production, and Tom, maybe you can give us a quick overview. I know there's an extensive briefing in the package as well. And maybe you can give us a 30,000.
Yeah, have to. The Tales from the Void has actually been filming in Sault Ste. Marie. And the production has support from NOHFC as well. In the past, what we have done in with the Community Development Fund with building projects is provide, it's obviously 3,500. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's amount of money we use to offset some of the additional costs filming in Sault Ste. Marie, the travel, et cetera, to get here. And it's a bit of a sweetener to help attract film productions to Sault Ste. Marie. It's just that little bit farther from Sudbury and North Bay, which have larger film hubs. And as we're looking to develop the film industry here, we've used this to help to attract film production to our community. On council meeting on Monday night, actually, we did approve a new film policy as well, just so people are aware, and that's going to help streamline some of the administration of these film productions when they come to town and make it easier for them to film in Sault Ste. Marie. We do have our film and digital media coordinator on staff now that's working to attract productions to Sault Ste. Marie. So overall, Tales from the Void, it's about a $2.1 million production. As I mentioned, they have been filming in the Sioux over the last few weeks. And the filming completed September 16th, 2023. And this 3,500 is a contribution towards the production.
Any questions for Tom? Okay. I got a quick one. This is 0.0166% of their film budget. Does this really move the needle?
Surprisingly, with these film productions, we found it has moved the needle. It's just that little bit of community support for the production. And when they're weighing costs, it seems like with all the productions that we deal with, that it's largely an exercise in assembling funding for their productions. So it's just that little bit of extra money that gets them into the community.
Thank you. Okay, so there is a motion here that be resolved that the EDC endorses the request from Tales from the Void in the amount of $3,500 from the CDF to cover production costs and recommends that City Council approve this request. We have a mover and a second. Sheila, all in favor? Thanks, Tom. Okay, moving into new business and updates. Joe, just now that he's got a full month of food, I'm going to turn over to God's country. So I'll do a little preamble while you finish there. So we had a request a number of months back from a local clothing supplier, God's Country Clothing, to utilize the old Sault Ste. Marie logo on some new promotional items that they were putting together. We had some significant discussions at previous board meetings because it turns out that the EDC somehow has ownership of that logo. And so our concerns, the opportunities that we saw were to ensure that the logo was put onto quality promotion gear that was representative of something that we would support this. And so I know Joe's taking the lead on this. I think he's just finished his sandwich. I'm going to hand it back to him for the various discussions that he's had.
The lead up to today's meeting, we received from patterns, if you know, or decals of drawings of what he wanted to do. That's one of them. The other caption that goes on the other items, some of those items, is Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, Canada, natural gift. That was the tagline, if you will, that Tourism Sault Ste. Marie at that time, the division of EDC, received from Brooks Marketing and Brooks Advertising. They did the full package all the time. So based on the drawings that we saw of what was being proposed, we thought that it would be helpful for sales to people coming up here for the tour trade and tourists and so forth, or if we're going to set up cargo shipment containers on waterfront at some point, good place to sell. Good stuff. So I went back to him and told him, the principal, the executive had no issue with that. If we supported it, subject of course to the board approval ultimately. Then the discussion took place as to whether or not there should be a charge for the use of the logo and for the use of what we have, what we own. The general feeling of the executive was, we don't know how much money this thing is going to generate. If any, and perhaps we could leave it to God Country to make some sort of donation to a charitable organization. So I went to God's Country and I spoke to him and exchanged text. And he said that he would consider doing that based upon what sales occur. So I asked for a product, I received it, I showed you the one item that's just hot off the press, so to speak. And he proposes to sell them at the tour train offices down here. And also, my strong recommendation, I suggested you should leave some to the hoteliers, consignment or other outlets, and try to spread it throughout the community. And I don't know what his resources are, but he indicated that he's prepared to do that. So at this point, it's before the board to authorize and approve the use of the logo and or the tagline by God's Country, and that we at some point down the road have some discussion about giving some of that money.
I think we did at a previous board meeting approve it. I think it was an update today. If I remember correctly.
I
Yeah,
don't recall the resolution.
yeah. Pretty much.
The ability to say, no, it's coming along here, so.
So,
I don't remember. That's
so this was a win-win, we thought. I mean, the fact that, you know, somebody wanted to promote the city through some clothing and also result in some donations that we had done with some of the charitable organizations in town. So, to be honest, before this process started, I don't think we were even aware that we owned the logo. So it wasn't like we were, you know, counting on something on our balance sheet here. It wasn't part of it. So, you know, I think this really was a win. So, and this is a local company that is doing this, will create some opportunities for investors. So that's sort of the things before you. It's really an information piece and answer any questions. Because there's obviously.
I have a question. Is it only clothing?
No, I don't know if it was limited to clothing, but I think God's Country is clothing.
Like no wallets, water bottles, things like that, just clothing.
I don't know if I mentioned earlier that Claudia Daniels, who now is in the board of Brooks Marketing, what it's called, but she's my next door neighbor. And so she's more than happy to confirm that logo belongs to the.
Yeah, so we did confirm that. That's right. Any other questions on this one? Any other comments?
If, say another retailer wanted to do this going forward, with the exact same process happen, they can move the board to get approval to use the logo and.
So we have to give them a bill of use, so it's not a book of money. So
As well as the city.
I would still retain ownership. We could do something like that, but again, it wasn't something.
There's one item, and that is you have to have a sort of small agreement saying that it's ours, we can use it. And if we don't like what he's doing, in essence, we can revoke the use, simplifying what the end of the city.
Yeah, I think we'd have to go back to Rick on that one, because I think he may have taken care of some of that stuff, right? Because he was in like the request. He was originally.
Follow up on that.
Okay, But that's a good.
Can I make a suggestion to the chair? Can we approve it subject to an agreement being signed? For an understanding or confirmation by God's country that it's our discretion as to who gets it, we can't assign it to anybody or anything of that kind. I just don't know what else is happening in that regard.
Yeah, so why don't we, I think I understand what you're saying, and if we look at, and maybe Robin can make comments, but I think we did have a motion previously for this.
I found it as well, but I'm not 100% certain.
So we're gonna confirm that there's a motion. We'll report back at the next meeting with respect to that, but we should also make sure that there's a drafted agreement between us and God's country that this board would then have to approve. Can we do that for the next meeting, you think, or did you want something today that was?
Well, to be sure, I would suggest that you decide that we pass a resolution authorizing God's country to proceed to use our logo and tagline that's rejected. And that we confirm with Rick whether or not there's a working agreement of some kind or a memorandum of understanding. It's very difficult to prepare.
Okay, so I think what we have before us is the board endorsing, so be resolved that the EDC board endorses God's country's use of the logo and tagline, subject to an agreement that the EDC staff will prepare and send over to God's country. And that endorsement is revocable by the board. Is that right? You can probably word it better than me or way around.
No, I would move it.
Okay, so Joe moves. Do we have a second? Bill, all in favor of that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item, 6.2, and I will mention, just so everybody's working off the same agenda. When I originally printed the agenda, there was up to 6.4, there was an addition of 6.5. And so just so we're all working from the same one, there is 5 items in the articles. The second item is the CDC EDC joint venture. That's the business plan content. And that's page 25 to 27 in the package. And this is a summary that page 25 of 27 of the package. It's a summary of minutes from the meeting, which identifies sort of the agreement in principle with respect to this business plan contest. This was a meeting that Joe and I had with Dan Freya, who heads up the CDC. And so the final decisions were that the term of this contract be for 2 years. The thought on this went through some previous discussions in the last board iteration, but there was a feeling that it would create some momentum, and so doing a one-off probably wasn't the way to maximize this, but to have a multi-year. And the thought was to start with 2 years. It was a partnership, an equal partnership between the EDC and the CDC, and it was for mid-tier companies. So right now there's some startup funding for new startups in town. And then there's, once you get to a certain size, then you have the ability to access the markets, access banks, etc. But it's really for that phase in between that needed to make that next jump. And was there an opportunity for us to lend a hand to some of those businesses? And so the dollar commitment was $250,000 per year per organization. So a total of a $500,000 commitment, which would create a total prize pool of $5 million. And those are all estimates. It's based on the actuals that end up coming in. It wouldn't be more than that, it'd be that or less. And the commitment is, it's not a forgivable loan. It is a prize that would have no principal and interest for the first 3 years. And then after 3 years, it could be converted into a term loan. And it can be converted into potentially equity if that's what you're interested in taking a ride. So those two are mentioned in B and E, or the loan, of course, can be paid up. Security would follow standard CFTC policy, and the rates charged would be Bank of Canada private. And so that's the standard sort of CDC, the way that they issue it. The evaluation committee would be made up of 4 people, 2 from the EDC, Mason, and 2 from the CDC. And CDC, in terms of processing, they would take the lead on filtering and going through the initial look at these applications or submissions. Anybody that wasn't suitable or wasn't eligible, they would eliminate. And then the rest will be referred up to this committee, evaluation committee. Applications that are accepted by that committee would go, and this is step 2, would be invited to submit a full business plan, which would be reviewed and summarized by the CDC staff. And then recommendations would be made by the CDC staff back to the committee based on the criteria with an emphasis on the financial feasibility. The idea is that the contestants would then be reviewed by CDC staff and under normal analysis, and the acceptable ones would go through the CDC investment review committee. So again, they're going through some rigor with respect to ensuring that it's a reasonable loan and reasonable likelihood of getting it. And then step 3 is the contestants' proposals, and CDC analysis would come back to that joint CDC-EDC committee for consideration. And then the contestants would be invited to make their pitches to the joint committee for consideration. The idea is to create some excitement, a bit of a buzz. I think it's not quite like a Dragon's Den sort of thing, but it's a bit analogous to that, and sort of create a bit of a buzz, and at the same time give those small to medium-sized companies the ability to make that leap that they might not have with current partner. There's some proposed timelines. I don't think we're going to hit the September 1st since we're already about 3 weeks after that. But the idea is that about a month after it opens, we'd have it vetted, and a month later, we'd have some selected contestants go a business plan, and then by about mid-December, it would turn into a presentation. So that's really the intent of it. It's something that when we sat and did our strategic plan last year, I think we thought was a way to help try to support those companies, but at the same time, maybe create some excitement in town. And I think it also would increase the vigor with which people look at their businesses when they've got to actually redo a business plan, go through some vetting. I think with a healthy dynamic that it creates, even in just the outputs. So any thoughts on this one? Again, it's coming back. I think we previously approved it, but we'd like to get this board to approve as well. And we wanted to make sure that if there was any considerations that we should take into the negotiations with CDC.
Yeah, just to confirm, that the lead up to this was looking at a situation based on Dantria's approach to us to replicate or to use as a template the plan and program that they have in Muskoka. And so we looked at the Muskoka experience and based upon how they handled it and how much money they had available, etc. And we tried to fine tune that to deal with the economy in Sault Ste. Marie. And it is Sault Ste. Marie, it's not the district of Algonquin. And so we have some guidance as well from Muskoka and the director of development in Muskoka, I think, putting this together. We need some additional help. He was very, very good and very cooperative. Provided us with all his forms and all of the applications we saw on the Dantria's map.
Any questions on this one?
Would there be a consideration of bringing Algoma University on, whether it's the students or maybe a couple of professors? We used to do this as part of a business program, presented it, and then you have like a case study and you have to talk with them and how you. But it kind of sounds very familiar to what they're doing there. It'd be interesting if I think whether it's their top students or professors can come on and kind of assist with the business.
Yeah, we could talk to Dan about that. I think.
Well, that fits into the other prong, and that is that if there's no one on staff that CDC in processing the application, there is going to be some hiring of professionals or third-party evaluators. So if, depending on the nature of the problem that has to be analyzed, they will go outside of their staff and get some expert advice. So they do have that avenue. So if there's someone qualified in a particular area, they will use local resources, I'm sure, first, but that's the game plan.
I think the currently is one, there is some sort of a program now, I believe. But I think the scale on it's significant. It's really for small groups. Whereas this one, I mean, I think the prize allocations can be up to according to those if they're met the criteria for expanding jobs. Any other questions?
Did I miss somewhere where, how many contestants there can be? As many as want to enter?
It's an open invitation, it goes through a vetting. And then,
But they only pick a certain amount, or if they're all great, they'll pick them all.
so the idea is that there'd be a first, second, and third.
First, second.
come in.
Yeah.
But there's, one of the reasons that's not hard in stone is that if a business that was really favorable only really required $25,000, then you might reemploy in order to actually have the allocation time getting out.
We're hoping to have a surplus. I mean,
These are targeted investments rather than, these aren't grants. Right? So these are loans with a little wave interest for 3 years. CDC is going to waive interest for 3 years to help them get established. But there is a return. So it's a strategic investment.
How would businesses find out about this?
So this would be advertised and go out through the community, make sure that everybody did hear about it. I think there's a couple of targeted places. I think that Millworks is one where there's probably some businesses that are ready to take the next step. Making sure that some of those hear about it. Their website, sure.
Yeah.
Social media. But the CDC does these things well. That's part of what they do. And so partnering with them, they have the actual resources and they have the staff. We rent staff. But we don't really have a permanent workforce where they do. So doing advertising to follow up, answering questions on things like this, they're much more. Any other questions we can take on this one? No. Okay, so the motion would be to endorse the proposal that's listed in the minutes from the September the 18th, sorry, June 26th meeting. And so what we've done here is we've fleshed out the actual steps that this would take. We had done the allocation previously, I believe. But what we're looking for is the board's endorsement on the steps. So Bill moves it, have seconder. Okay, Darrell, all in favor?
Now, does this permit us to go the next step and have a draft agreement? Yeah. It's a night to the board or.
Yeah,
and your signature.
well, we've got the structure here. So these are the final decision steps. So then we'll take this and we'll get the final. Okay, so the okay, so 6.3. So one of the things that I had an opportunity to have a discussion with Mayor Shoemaker. And I think one of the things that we discussed was with respect to the EDC, there may be an opportunity for us to ensure that we are aligned with the activities that we do to make sure that we're sort of getting the most bang for the buck. The history on this, and I think Joe and Bill can probably do this better than I can, but so feel free to jump in if I'm missing something here. But the gist of it was that a number of years ago, the EDC was a independent organization. It was brought in and a lot of the functions transferred over to the city. And the current version of the EDC holds some significant investments from that previous board. and has a fairly strict down mandate compared to what it used to have. And so I think one of the things that we've had discussions with over the last couple of years is what is in fact the EDC's mandate at this point. And I think perhaps a discussion with the city, specifically with the mayor and other senior staff, may help us to make sure that we're not at cross purposes and things. And so I think we wanted just to get the thoughts of the board on that one. And if we are in agreement, then we will issue an invite to our next meeting and invite the mayor and whoever he would see fit with that. So, any thoughts? Sam's quiet down there.
Oh, yeah, late, by the way, I thought we started at 12:30. I was looking at the second page of the agenda. And I apologize for that. No, I think it's great. Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
I agree. I think it's a good idea. The rules changed before all the EDC economic development staff were under this corporation. Now they were back, now they're with the city. So I think it's time for discussion and just long-term planning and put some ideas in.
And the recalibration.
I was going to add, Rob, I think it's good timing that the new council is just undergoing a new corporate strategic planning process now. So I think there's opportunity for the EDC board to contribute to that. And so I think it's good timing that way.
So Tom or Robin, can you draft a request for the next meeting for us?
Yeah.
And I think we have the next meeting in here is November the 22nd. We could do an invite to the mayor and to any other individuals who think it's being appropriate to discuss how we can work together to provide opportunities and services. That's good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so along the same lines, one of the things that probably would help when we do have that discussion is for us to have some alignment with what we think the EDC's goal potentially would be. So our board season, really, when you look at when the appointments are done and when you look at sort of the fact that summer's fairly slow, is really a September to a June season. And so what would we like to accomplish as a board between now and the end of June? And I think one of the things that would help us is to create those goals so that we have a bit of a North Star that we continue to work towards. Because I think a lot of what I've seen over the last couple of years, and I think Joe can attest to this, is we have requests that come to us. We don't necessarily know how they align with the mandate or what. So I think that so at our last board meeting, I had asked for some contemplation over the summer. And I'm thinking that we've had a chance to do that and come up with.
I have a question that we had some things we were dealing with in the previous board.
Yeah.
I remember we had that sort of contest to give us some ideas on where we should go.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're still pursuing that.
That contest is the one with the CDC.
When we talked about the different development proposals in the city, I think there were 10 things that we're supposed to put some ideas forward. So maybe I missed that part of the here though. I don't know whether the new members coming in or advised of what was going on, things we had worked on before. So
I think we filtered it down, and correct me if I'm wrong here, and again, don't go if you want to weigh in on it, but I think we filtered it down to 3 things that we're looking to do. We had a focus on this business plan contest and the ability to support businesses. We had a focus on the downtown. And the third, I think, was when we ended up discarding, and I don't remember.
City website. It was making sure that all of the funding opportunities were properly posted on the city website.
Yeah. So I think that was those things were substantially a big part of our last mandate. So we did the downtown loan program, which is 6.5 today, right? We did this business plan contest that we have with the CDC and the website information. I think we got a report back that actually was done through the Millbrook. Right?
Yeah, that was completed.
So those 3 that we focused on, I think we did finish. And so the thought was we got to come back and renew
I thought we had, it's my understanding, I think I misread it. We were talking about waterfront development, exploiting some of the opportunities or exploring that.
Okay.
But I thought it was in there, but maybe it didn't make it. I don't have to.
We did have one sheet that you would have seen and it had all, there was more than 9 items. So it had them all in one sheet, then we selected the top 3 that had the most points.
Yeah. So I think if you think that there's other ones below there that we should be looking at, I think this is the time to sort of bring the discussion.
Well, I mean, I think obviously, I look at my window every day at the old hospital stuff. That comes up in a lot of discussions with people. What's going on with that? I don't know whether there's been any further discussion on that part of it. But, 20 acres of land downtown, undeveloped. It's going on now for how many years? I guess the question I always hear, people say, well, it's going to cost so much to do the environmental. And I don't think we ever had a real proposal to say, this is how much it is. And again, I don't know what's happening. I know there's a lot of people they bring that because people are living in those buildings. The blight it is to the waterfront, but I mean, I realize you're going to do some things at a time. So,
And I think Tom can probably give us some limited, based on some of the confidentiality stuff, but I think it's privately owned. Yeah, and I don't think it's for sale either, right?
It's not actively listed right now.
Not actively listed. And privately owned.
was it listed before, Tom? I thought
It was listed before, yeah, very briefly. There wasn't really, I don't think there was a price attached to it. It's like it was up on MLS for $1 or something, but there was no price there. But as far as I know, it's not currently listed.
I don't think it
Involves a real estate transaction, so probably would be better to talk about equivalence, I would imagine, right? So if there's any further on that. Bill?
Well, I understand the proposition that we'd like to have the waterfront development better, that we enhance the community. But you're probably limited by 2 things. Number 1, control of the site in terms of ownership, legal issues, expropriation, contamination, and all of those other things. And this board has insufficient funds to even look at it, let alone handle it. So you're confined by the legal realities, I guess that's the way to put it. And I know the city has been trying to develop the other portion here, adjacent to the mill. And again, anything that we could do with the board or funding third party people would be great. But I don't know, we don't have the staff, we don't have the finances necessary to deal in those areas. But I share Sam's concern, and I'm sure Tom would chime in with that some on this, so. You're in a restaurant, you look at the menu, you like to have lobster, you like to have all kinds of expensive things, but then you have to look at your wallet, the realities of your financial abilities. So I don't know if we can handle anything that big.
Is it worth maybe putting that on one of the discussions that we may have with the mayor at the next meeting to say, is there anything we can do to assist with the redevelopment and all of the hospitals? And if there is, maybe we want to put that on?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll let you raise it with them. But I think we all share the concerns. And I think we all see that as an opportunity for us. It just seems like a fairly significant.
An interesting exercise going to the mayor is what he sees us our role to do. Doesn't sense of that's for them to redraw whether that is. But it is. Maybe different.
Yeah, maybe we'll
Just do the slide.
So really, we're looking for projects or ideas, but just talking with the city, for many, many years, we've always talked about Port Authority. And I know the city was been talking about that for years. And I know there's different times with depending on the parties involved or different places, but is it time to bring that up again? About portability and, you know, probably assist with some planning or some studies, but the city would be the lead on that with the other levels of government, so maybe time that we can raise that issue again and, talk about portability.
I think we had an update not that long ago from Rick on it, if I remember correctly. And I think the gist of it was that it wasn't moving very quickly. So maybe that's another one where maybe we could just simply offer to lend a hand with good.
I think there is maybe some, there's an opportunity there, some real momentum perhaps, and so we can provide, it's a good topic, I think, Bill, you're right, and I think there may be an opportunity for us to move something forward, so we can have a conversation on that one.
The process of traffic has been unbelievable compared to past years.
Right.
I'd like to, talk about maybe some treatment centers or recovery buildings. Because as far as I know, there aren't any. And, I know several people who would be interested in perhaps having a private treatment center if it's not government funded or, you know, but from the city. But I think there's definitely a need for that here.
Would that fit into maybe a broader picture of the downtown and all the issues that we're seeing?
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're not only downtown. They're, you know, the people need help everywhere in the city, not just downtown. So I think it would be, I mean, it's very important to take a look at what's happening in the city with the crisis here.
Okay.
Well, as being a newbie, it'd be great to understand, for me to understand where the EDC fits in the jigsaw puzzle. It's the same thing. You think there's all sorts of opportunities that sort of fly up and get plans up about what we should be doing, but I was just asked for a brain that agriculture. And I noticed in Central Zone, there's a whole bunch of soybeans being grown, so I was asked, can you help us market soybean? No, this is good else. Several uses. That's what you do. Yeah, but there is. The agricultural sector is looking for homes for practicalities for some stuff they're growing. But those soybeans aren't going to get exported somewhere there. But there's opportunity for them if there was a public or feed mill or something. Then they could be close to get the enzymes down, then the piece of the town. So, but again, is that their domain or is that's private sector or that? I don't mean that as a specific, but that just that concept. I'm really good at understanding what
I think that was the impetus for maybe we should have a sit down with the city and try to figure this out. Yeah, because I think I felt the same thing since I came on board a couple of years ago. Is that there's some worthwhile things that come in front of us and that we deal with, but there may be some other things that we don't even think about because we're not really sure what exactly is. And I think, you know, Joe, we've had this discussion many times at the exact case, exactly what I was thinking. It's the city's name early. Is there things that we should do?
I guess one other idea I had was, like we all know there's a shortage of skilled labor in town. Could we sponsor EDC series information sessions on different skilled trades? Like we would, like it takes advertising, event coordinating, dealing with employers and unions, but to have a series and kind of logically pick different areas, like pick skilled trades, healthcare, industrial, and we kind of formalize and say, here's another EDC series, and this is healthcare, flexible hospitals and unions, and just kind of have a formalized area dealing with different sectors, and so young people can come, or people can come and say, am I interested in that field? Just a thought of something to invest, like, we don't have the staff for it, but we could. You get an event planner, do you get, I don't know, Tom, how you deal with that, but, or as an idea,
I think we could coordinate it. I imagine there'd be employers in town that would see
Yeah.
that as an opportunity to try to promote some of the things they need to.
Yeah.
So. I think the strategy would be to try to help address the labor shortage.
right,
So there would be a number of steps in there. I think. Sessions.
I think of that labor shortage with regards to project that I've done university. Seems to optimistic with that saying that in a couple of years. What you see as far as the practicality of the construction.
I agree. I think that'll be a big challenge. There aren't too many projects that you see in town, ours included, you see, that are ahead of schedule.
Very close to schedule.
Despite the best intentions. Okay, so I currently have 4 on our list that we can talk about. So the hospital sites, which I think we may have a resolution to bring up in a couple of months from from the Port Authority, advocating for treatment centers or perhaps facilitating. And then the labor shortage, sort of a strategy to help address that through steps. Is there any others that we want to contemplate? We've focused a lot on the downtown. That's something we should continue to do.
I mean, when I think of the billboards that when we come towards where we talk about nationally gifted and having Hiawatha search notes, having the world still. I'm not sure if that's under our mandate, but I think a film production is coming to this area. Probably like seeing some more natural gifted areas.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it does fit somewhat underneath this, because we had some funding that went that way. Right? Respect some of the trails. So I think we have. Tourism would likely be the one that would be responsible for creating the trip to the area, but facilitating things that people would come and visit in the area would be us. Could involve us. Joe?
Well, you know, I'm impressed by what First Drum is doing, marketing First Columbia. Some of the ads are unbelievable, if anybody has seen them. And they're not explored in that area of the city of Sault Ste. Marie in terms of tourism. How we do that is a part of the culture, what else we can do. But I think tourism has got to be one of the biggest areas of the economy that we should be supporting. And so to that extent, the downtown revitalization plan and things that would attract people to come here, whether it's the waterfront, whether it's the museum, whether it's Point Machine Park, so places like that. We've got to sort of exploit those areas. One of the things I'd love to see happen is development of the Point Machine Park. I know Tom and I had a conversation. These are 20 kilometers from the downtown. And right now you have people parked all over the road because it's shut down. But there's a place to see the colors and at the same time get blown away by the winds off Lake Superior. You know.
Yeah. I think there's some complexity to that one that we probably have to dive into a bit before we could land there,
But tourism is.
But I think your point.
I know Tom's put some money together for do some cleanup in the area every year.
I think your point is how can we provide, or how can we help support the development of places where people coming to Sault Ste. Marie would have a positive experience. And that's what I could think. So Point Shane's are qualified for people that complexity. The downtown, I mean, I think that's a key part of the city's. You guys are focused a lot on that.
absolutely.
Yeah. What are some next steps that you made public yet?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not that we've made public, I think council, just so everyone, make sure everyone's aware, so. Council approved, $6 million towards Queen Street revitalization. And, so we'll have that project going on next year, obviously the downtown plaza is just completing and the farmers market opens Saturday. Shortville Market at 8:30 at 73 Brock Street will be opening, for the new location. But there are some things that I think will be a good conversation to have with the EDC board in terms of what's next for the downtown. And looking at that, the next phase of development for the downtown core and what's required. The other one, Rob, if I may, consideration for the board to consider is, we just sold 2 parcels of land on Gates Avenue at the most recent council meeting. And so our industrial land strategy and what's next is something that's occupying Vic right now. Because, we're almost out of land on Gates. We have Wood Park Court and we have some interest in different portions of that site already. So we're looking ahead to, what's the next industrial park in the community or land that we could acquire to service to attract businesses here. And in the last year, certainly we've seen quite a turnaround where, that land on Gates sat largely undeveloped for 20 years. In the last year, we've sold now most of that land. So there's an uptick in interest in the market. And there's a potential, I think, for the city. And what we've seen is by having the land there assembled, ready to go, we've been able to some local businesses and attract some new business, right? So that's something we'd love to think about as well in the future.
With the industrial lands.
That was something I wanted to bring up because I know I deal with all the time in our office, the original industrial land available on the open market. I just sold a couple of pieces that were the last pieces we could find that were serviced and ready to go. So, and I don't know when the last time you looked at the official plan to see going forward where there might be parcels of land that if they were just zoned and serviced, that the private sector would take. Without going to another, I know that the price that Gates was sold, you can't service that land. Right? From what I know, what cost servicing, I think 2,000 an acre.
You call that, let's say that land was pretty good at $51,000.
But I'm sorry, Joe, what's that?
I said you called that $51,000 or $50,000.
Yeah.
So that would go pretty quick.
And it did, yeah. But I guess what I'm suggesting is that we don't have to have another city in the park as much as maybe looking at some land that if it was just zoned and plans to service it were in place, the developers would develop it. There is a market for that right now for vacant land that can just be bought at market value of $200,000 an acre, $250,000. So, but you have to go through the process. By the time we get around to doing all that, they're on to somewhere else. They're not going to wait 2 years to go through the zoning and all the rest of the regulations. So, going forward, I think to have it available in zone and ready to go would be an asset.
We look at some of the, the larger kind of site selection type magazines and publications and, part of what we can summarize this for the board, but part of what you look at, like in the US, it's not just land, they have warehouses built, right, ready to go for businesses that want it. So there's a kind of a gradient of preparedness and having industrial land there that we need to dive into and think about, okay, what do we need to have here and what's our inventory and how do we market it? And you're right, Sam, some of it can be private, but we need to make sure it's there, and it's one of the key things.
Yeah, I think one of the other things to keep in mind is with all the activity that's planned in the next few years, the result of that is likely to be some significant co-location of businesses. And so you want to get on this really good. Exactly. Green steel, $1 billion investment that may transform the other types of businesses that have.
Just on that topic, is there opportunities at the airport for expansion or kind of tied in for vacant land, but industrial land? Is there still opportunities at the airport? The airport does have land listed for sale right now. I know they're having discussions with some components about land, so they,
They want to build a apartment on the floor, along the way. They have the airport, about a year and a half ago.
who was that? They,
Well, there was a proposal by Salvan
oh,
to develop that interior land.
Right.
Around the,
Oh, yeah, the other guy.
oh gosh, yeah.
No, I think, without getting confused, there's the industrial, heavy industrial. And now you have more of a retail environment with manufacturing as well, where they want 10,000 square foot building. But they need to be where traffic is, in an area that's, I know when I tell people about the airport, it's just too far to do what they want to do. People aren't gonna drive out there. So I think that's part of what we're missing here as far as our land inventory, is just something like that where, you know, and you might even see where they've condominiumized it, where you can actually buy an industrial unit and be part of almost like a condominium association. But I mean, I just think we have to look forward to what's going on in other areas and how they're doing it. But when you get a call from a small business now, and you know what happens, there's nothing there. And then they call them back and say, well, we went to Sudbury or we went somewhere else. So no, it's just that things have changed since the official plan was done to it's a new environment, box storage and all these other things. Well, no, you're right. I mean, they're almost like look like an industrial building. So
I have a sixth one that I added, which was industrial land strategy. Maybe the thought is if we could put these in the minutes, we could give them some thought between now and the next meeting, and the next meeting rally around a few of these, and whether we can do everything. So that we round around a few.
Yeah, and Rob, from staff's perspective, we can put together some information for the board to consider on some of these items that, you know, the port, the industrial land. Some of that will have to move to closed session because there are some specific parcels that we've talked about that we can mention to the board and close. And also as related to downtown. So there's some information we can provide as well for the board.
Okay.
And we don't have to wait till the board meeting. We can get information out for people to read in advance.
That would be really helpful. So are we okay with tabling this for the next meeting and then having a discussion once we can get some additional information? Yeah. I think there's also some sources that are working on the labor shortage issue.
Sorry, that was the other one I meant to
Maybe
mention.
that one up too from an information perspective, and then we could sort of weigh in as to how we think we may have to.
That's right. We do have a labor force development coordinator on staff at the city now. And so we've been working with businesses and two things. One, right now we have the rural and urban integration pilot program, which has been wildly successful for us and for our businesses. We're hoping that program is made a permanent program, at the very least extended for more another 3 years, but we're hoping it would be a permanent program. We can provide information on that. As part of our RNet funding, we received some funding from FedNor. Sorry, as part of the RNet program, we received some funding from FedNor that helped us hire administrative staff, but also do some marketing. We've allocated some of that funding towards skilled trades attraction, so we can provide information on that, what we've done and how it's gone. And then also healthcare sector being a key area as well. So we've done some work there, and we can provide information on that. And certainly it's an area I think of potential collaboration. And then also just being opportunistic when things have happened in the economy. Espanola being a recent example, there was businesses down in Espanola the day after the announcement was made, looking to attract skilled trades here. So we've been trying to support businesses when those opportunities come up as well.
Sounds good.
set up a trainer, create an application.
All right, so I think we've gone through 6.4. So let it be noted in the minutes that 109, Stephanie stepped out.
I asked a question, again, I think it's movie. I happen to own property downtown. Business property that is given this.
Are you a party to another one? No, I don't think that. However, it is for you to evaluate.
You're not providing zero, okay. We know the words.
Okay, so, turning to page. Let's see, 28. There's an announcement in here on the Community Economic Development Fund. It's just an information piece that was included in the package. That's one of the things the CDC is doing. And then to that end, they have some outreach. You can see that on the bottom of page 29 and 30. We are part of that outreach. So we received this document. And so on page 31, there's a press release related to that same item. And again, that's just provided for your information. And then on page 32, there's a report from Dan Freya. And that is with respect to the downtown revitalization program. We're doing loans into downtown. And there's a report there on status, what they've been doing, and that they'll be hiring. And so it looks like this has been extremely successful. I know Dan, I think we originally put in $500,000 a year. Ours was, I don't think what ours was. Remember, Bill, what ours was? There's half of it.
About 500 each, 500 each, yeah.
Whatever each, yeah. Goes in as loans, and then potentially half of the EDC loan is forgivable if meeting certain criteria. And the idea was to create some beautification for downtown revitalization. So the information is in there. Is there any questions or comments on the program? No, it's a relatively new board. So.
All I can say is that people who applied and were granted money seem to put it to good use. You can tell the difference between those buildings that got refreshed, for lack of better expression, and those that could still use some systems.
Great.
Especially in the plaza area.
It's a few months.
I think there's a lot of work to be done downtown, but it's nice to see that in bite-sized chunks it's been done. And so this is certainly. Okay, any comments on this one? Anything else? We really just an information piece to report back on the board. I guess it's something that was already been released. Somebody let Stephanie back in. Just in time to finish the meeting.
Yeah, just no CDC can take advantage of this community development fund for labor force development projects and events.
Yeah, there we go.
So beautiful. You got $2,500 in your pocket.
Okay, so it's 1:13 and Stephanie's back. We have upcoming meetings on part or item 7 here on the agenda. So you can see that there are 3 meetings listed. 2 of them are executive meetings on October 11th and November 15th. The October 11th one is if needed. So that may not happen. There's an items. And then the EDC full board is November the 22nd, and that one is the date that we were going to invite our shareholders. So if for some reason you can't make it, then we'll kick it to the meeting early. So anything else that we want to go over today before we have a motion for adjournment? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Yeah. Seconder? Sheila? All in favor of adjourning? Good. Thank you.